Hello, this is Fred Allendale with another Event Staffing Board tutorial. Today we're going to go over the contents of the staffing board. I've resed up a clean staffing board here. And in the contents you'll see a variety of scripts, but the note card we're going to be talking about today primarily is the configuration note card. It has all the parameters that allow you to customize the board to operate the way your application needs. There are also several other note cards in the contents. This event staff application is something that you'll want to replace with your own application. There's right now just a placeholder in there. So this would be tailored to your particular requirements. I just replace this note card with your own, keeping the same name. There's also a help note card for owners and administrators, which has a lot of detail about the board. And then there's also a staff help note card that is tailored for just what a staff member might need to know to sign up for events and to get information from the board. And you can see that those note cards are given out automatically when somebody clicks the help button from the bottom row of the menus. So right now it's giving me this owner help note card, and you can see all the detailed information in here. Okay, so let's open this configuration note card, and we'll go over the parameters in a fair amount of detail one at a time. Some overall notes about this using this note card. All the lines that you see here that start with 2 slashes are actually just comment lines to help you understand the parameters. They could actually be deleted once you get your parameters set, because that allows the note card to load a little bit faster, or you can just leave them in place. It's a good idea to expand the note card window out quite wide so that you don't get any wraparound, word wrap, or you might mistake a line that wraps around, like, for example, this. You might think this is not a comment line, but it's really the end of the comment line above it. So you'll enter all your parameters on the first line. It has a parameter name and a colon, and following that is where you'll enter your actual parameters. You don't enclose anything in quotes. You don't need to leave a space after the colon, although you can if you want to. I have for a lot of these default parameters in place, but of course you can replace them with whatever parameters are applicable. No line can be longer than 255 characters. Everything after that gets ignored. But in some cases, if you need to enter more, like on the admin list, you can actually enter a separate line for a continuation. So you might have 2 admin list lines, maybe something like that, where you had a number of administrators where they don't fit all in one line because it would exceed the 255 limits. So for the administrator list, the administrators that you assign can perform pretty much all the same functions as the board's owner, with a few minor exceptions. You enter names, and this applies to all parameters where names are required. You have to enter the username, not the display names, because they're not unique. And you can omit the resident after single name avatars. And if it's a 2-name avatar, then the first and last names are separated with a space, not with a period, like is shown in some cases. And the names are not case sensitive, so you don't need to worry about that. So you can leave this blank. The owner always has rights. You don't need to enter the owner in the admin list, but anybody else you want to have the same rights as the owner, you could put in this list. Ban list was just a list of people that are not allowed to access the board. The role list is the series of predefined roles that are possibly unique to your operation. You can change this however you like. I just picked some arbitrary roles that are probably common, but you put your own role names in there. You can't enter a role for an event if it doesn't appear in this list, and you won't get the button pop-ups for any roles that aren't in this list. So this is important to set this up correctly to correspond to the roles that you use in your venue. The maximum number of characters per role is 12. So don't put in a really long role name because they won't fit on the buttons. They'll run off the button and it'll be unclear to use. And the maximum number of roles is 8, again limited by the number of buttons that you can have in a menu, plus the ones reserved for the bottom row for help and back, etc. One word of caution is that deleting or changing a role name will prevent staff members that have the old role from using the board. So you can't just go in here and change a role name because the old role names are still in the staff member list, and so they'll show up as unqualified even though there's the old role name is there. So once you set this up, try and leave those role names the same. You can certainly add or delete roles if you want to, but keep in mind, again, if you delete a role, anybody who's been assigned to that role will no longer be allowed to staff the events. This HUD passphrase, I'll come back to this later for the discussion about the HUD. It is not, if you're not using the staff HUDs, you don't need to do anything with the passphrase. If you are using the staff HUDs, then you need to put in a unique phrase or word or password, whatever you want to call it, in here that identifies this board, so that in the case of having multiple boards maybe in a region, the HUDs won't get confused and they'll only hook up to this particular board that has this, that matches this passphrase. And we'll cover that in detail in the tutorial on the use of the staff HUDs. The note cards for the owner admin help and the staff help are arbitrary names. I've picked some kind of generic sounding names, but if for some reason you want to name these something different to be given out with the help button, you can change their name, the name of those note cards here. If you're exporting or importing either events or staff member lists from an external note card, and you want to change the name of those for some reason, you can also change the names of those note cards here. And I'll get into the export and import process in a different tutorial. Similarly, the staff application note board, this is given out when they push the apply button. This is the note card that you'll put in yourself with your own format. If you want to call it something else, maybe the name of your organization is in the name of the note card or something else, then just change the name here and then make sure that name matches the name of the note card that you put in there for the application that you put into the board. The owner login IM is a feature that whenever the board's owner logs into Second Life and is in the same region as the board, it can send the event IMs to the board's owner automatically, so that you can see what events are pending and need staffing. I've got this enabled by default. If you want to turn that IM off, it might get annoying after a while. Just change that to no. The send IMs pertains to the staffing requests and the staff reminder instant messages. So once a day, staffing requests go out to everybody on your staff list, and for any event, any pending event that has unfilled staff positions. And likewise, some number of minutes before an event is due to start, all the people that are staffed for that event will get a staff reminder IM. If you set this to no, those IMs will be inhibited. Note also that the IMs get received anywhere grid-wide and can also be forwarded to emails if they're offline and they have that offline forwarding of IMs enabled in their account. And one problem with enabling this is if you have a lot of events, it's going to result in a lot of IMs, and that could result in your IMs getting capped when your offline staff members are offline. So you may want to cautiously enable that. Also, individual staff members, as I mentioned, can opt in or opt out of receiving IMs, and that's via their menu functions. The next one either enables or disables sending of HUD messages, and we'll go over that more when we get into the staff HUDs as well. As I mentioned before, with the staffing request IM time, once a day, all events that have unfilled staff positions will cause IMs to be sent to all staff members on your staff list. And this will be once every day at the time you specify here in Second Life time. And again, the format being 24-hour time, hour, colon, minute. Each of these events, each of these IMs will, for each event, include the event ID, the name of the event, the start date and time, the length, the location, availability, available roles, pay amounts for those roles, and instructions for how to sign up, as well as a clickable slur for the event. The IMs won't be sent for any events that are fully staffed, or if the staff member is elected to opt out. IMs do take quite a while to send in Second Life. If you have a particularly long event list, you might have 40 or 50 or maybe even 100 members on your list. So it could take as long as a couple of hours to send IMs for each event to each staff member. It'll depend a lot, but it all happens automatically in the board. You don't have to do anything other than set this time for when during the day you want the reminders to go out. The staffing request filter can be turned on and off. This will eliminate staffing request IMs from going out for open positions that the member is not qualified for. So with it on by default, it'll send the staffing request only to the members who are qualified, and that will tend to minimize the number of IMs that go out, and your people won't be getting IMs for staff positions that they're not qualified for. But you can also turn it off so that everybody gets all of the open events, open staffing position events. The staffing reminder minutes specifies how long before the start of an event that reminder IMs are sent out to the staff members that are signed up for that particular event. So that's a nice feature, and you can set that to whatever time you want. There's also a reminder option to send out an IM reminder to the board's owner that it's a good idea to back up the staff and event lists. Right now the default is 7 days, but you can set it, if you don't want those reminders, just set it to 0. And again, in another tutorial, I'll go over how to back up and restore your event and staff lists. The next 3 parameters relate to automatic payments. So in order for somebody to get paid automatically at the end of an event, you need to first tell the system how far from the event location they need to be in order to be deemed present at the events. And some people might sign up and then just not show up, or be outside of the event area, and so you don't want them to be paid. So you specify the payment radius from the event coordinates that you put into the event, and they must be within those within that radius in order to qualify to get paid. And then the payment radius percent means what percent of the time do they have to be in that area. They might stray outside the area for a few minutes to talk to somebody or to attend to something, but it's still valid for them to be paid. So I set up the default as 90% of the time they have to be within this radius. And then the other question is, you have to answer is, do you want to enable payment prorating, which means that if they're outside of this radius for a certain percentage of the time, do you not want to pay them at all if they aren't there for 90%, for example, or do you want to pay them a percentage of the total payment, depending on what percent of the time they were within that radius? So that's enabled by default, but you can turn it off. And if they're present less than the payment radius percent, they won't be paid at all. Or with yes, they'll be paid the prorated amount. And again, these apply to all events and all event staff. You can't tailor this to say it's these rules for one event and some other rules for another event. These will apply to all events. And then the last parameter on here is what I call user timeout, which basically the board, when somebody activates a menu, whether it's an owner, administrator, or somebody on staff trying to sign up, if they activate a menu, it locks the board to them so that somebody else can't come up in the middle of when they're doing a transaction and start a transaction of their own. That would confuse the board. So the board locks to that particular user until they close all their menus. And it's only if they close the menu with the Done button, which appears on every menu, or they use the back button to get all the way back to the original menu and the menu disappears. If they use the Ignore button, the script will not know that they closed the menu, so that it'll think they're still working on it, and the board will stay locked to them. There is a timeout then after 2 minutes as a default, but you can set this longer or shorter. With no activity, the user menus will time out. They'll get a warning. The user will get a warning. The board will be released for somebody else to use, and no action will be taken on any menu that's already shown there. So this just allows the board to be freed up in case somebody does close a menu using an Ignore button. So that pretty well covers the ESB configuration card, and I'm going to cancel that out. I don't really want to, I don't know what I changed, but I don't want to save it. Anyway, that pretty well wraps up the configuration note card tutorial, and stay tuned for the next tutorial in the series. We'll cover the HUD and some of the other features of the Event Staffing Board. Thank you very much for your attention.